Good evening.
Hey,
Can you all hear me? All right, first and foremost, happy Teacher Appreciation Day. To every single educator in this room, to every single educator in our beloved New York City, and to our Chancellor. Thank you, Chancellor, for having us tonight. I'm honored to join this group tonight. My name is Maria Elise Tivane. I serve as the Executive Director of Educators for Excellence. And we are tonight here alongside amazing teachers, amazing educators, amazing advocates, amazing funders, folks that truly, truly care for our children and for our city and for our education system. Thank you all for being here to lift up the voices of teachers who are leading the way on so much in our city, including this pivotal moment for math instruction in New York City. And so I want to begin by sharing a couple things. One is gratitude for our Chancellor. We were last here with you, Chancellor Aviles Ramos, in December. We had a room packed of educators, and we were here to discuss with you and your amazing team NYC rates. And we asked if you would come back and meet with us, if we could come back, or if you could meet with us, period. And you said, that's easy. The answer is yes. And so here we are, focused on solves, and looking forward to this conversation. So I'm going to do a couple of things. I'm going to share a little bit of context of how we got here tonight. And then I'm going to pass it to my colleague, Lasana Tunica El, who will talk about the work we've been doing with our teachers for the past year. And then we want to hear from you and hear your remarks, and then turn it to amazing experts, our teachers, our leaders around this table who have things to share with you tonight. We are here because we want NYC Solves to succeed, which requires naming both the bright spots and the barriers, so we can build on what's working and tackle the challenges. We're here because NYC Solves holds real promise if we listen to educators. I'm going to say that again, if we listen to educators. Research confirms that high-quality instructional materials paired with robust professional learning can transform student outcomes. And we know you believe that and have poured, and your team has poured into the professional learning that's happening with teachers around this city. We're also here because we all believe math is vital, period. And it's vital for student success. It's critical to everyday activities, understanding fractions. I'm going to go into the list here. Managing finances, cooking. God only knows if I don't pour the exact amount of sugar, we might be eating something terrible. The statistics, critical thinking, so on and so forth. And on a more serious note, researchers have found that the erosion of math skills experienced by America's 8th graders may lead to hundreds of billions of dollars in lost earnings over the coming decade. And that is especially true for young people of color in our city and in our nation. So the bigger vision here is that we know that great materials are important, and you are doing that work with high quality implementation materials, but we also know that it's not enough. Implementation is everything. We have a shared responsibility to sustain and strengthen NYC Solves, and that starts by listening closely to those doing the work every day, and that's the educators. So when we listen to educators, and you know this, and I've heard you talk about this, we ensure that these shifts actually work for students and teachers alike. And we make these changes stick, lasting beyond any single administration or moment. We want these changes beyond this moment. So tonight, you'll be hearing from our educators. They'll shed insight on how we can make NYC Solves a model for success. And I urge you to listen, but I know that you will. I want to just take a moment to acknowledge that it is amazing to have a chancellor who is an educator, who consistently demonstrates that she values and her team values the voices of teachers. And so we are grateful for that. And last but not least, I want to make sure that the excitement for tonight is clear. We have truly spent a year listening to educators. We will dive into the data tonight with their authentic stories around this table. And we know that if we listen to them, we will see lasting change. Lasana will share a little bit more next about the process of how we got here tonight. Then we'll turn it over to you, and then we'll hear from our teachers.
Thank you, Maria-Elise. As mentioned, I'm Lasana Tunica-El. Push the button after instructing my teachers on how to do it. Good evening, everyone. Before handing it off to our educators, I just want to start by sharing how we got here. Over the past year, we've had an amazing organizing team visiting schools across the city, lifting educators' stories around their experiences with NYC Solves. We've held countless focus groups. We've collected survey data from teachers from different boroughs across the city, across a wide range of schools. We've held town halls and webinars. We've had teams of teachers meet together and share their experiences with one another. So tonight, you will hear the collection of stories that are reflective of what we heard. From a year on the ground listening to teachers and what their vision is for ensuring the success of NYC Solves. And I'll now pass the mic over.
Hello, everyone. It's so great to see you here at Swede, and I thank you for coming down. I know this isn't the easiest commute for everyone, and it's kind of an ugly day, so thank you for making your way downtown with us. I just want to really thank Evan and Maria-Elise for creating the space, and your entire team for listening to teachers, for all the work you do around focus groups and giving us real, honest, constructive feedback that's moving the work forward, and also telling us what we're doing well, right? Because in order to sustain what's going well, you need to know what's going well. And then, of course, whatever's not going well, you need to make sure that you're addressing it. So I just want to thank them for that. And of course, we cannot say it enough. Happy Teacher Appreciation Day to all the educators. You know, I am a terrible politician. There are a lot of things, a lot of hats you have to wear as chancellor. But the one that I most proudly wear is that of educator. And being a teacher, I think it never leaves your system when it's something that you're just born to do. I genuinely believe that. The way I facilitate meetings and drive my team crazy with rolling agendas and capturing next steps, and if things are unruly, clap once if you hear me, clap twice. Which really works, by the way. You know, little things like that keep us anchored in the practices that teachers come up with every single day to facilitate learning in classrooms, particularly in classrooms like New York City's. And so when I first was announced to be chancellor, I hadn't started the position yet, but Michael Mulgrew spoke with me, and he said, you know, there's some solves issues, and we need to do something about it. And we immediately met with a group of chapter leaders, and we heard from them. And albeit it was a small sampling, we immediately acknowledged that there were some issues in the implementation. We were clear from Central that didn't mean that we were abandoning a great concept, but that we were listening very intently on the ways that we could address the implementation hiccups so that a wonderful thing could actually come to fruition. And it's a moment of collaboration that I was really proud of. You know, what good things happen when we work with our union partners to identify some of the challenges. So we have some wins with Solves already. You know, 85% of Solves teachers are confident in implementing their math curriculum. And when we did have a group of teachers make some of those adjustments to the units earlier this year, we did hear that was quite successful. Again, it did not solve all the issues, but that teachers really, really felt supported and relieved when they saw that kind of work and collaboration coming out of Central. But one area for growth that we can acknowledge right away, amongst the other things that we'll discuss here, is we need to bolster PL to support to ensure that teachers can really differentiate instruction, particularly as we serve our most marginalized students, our students with IEPs, our multilingual learners. And that's something that we knew was going to be an issue with both reads and solves. And that's why we are talking so much about now the intervention piece and tier 2 and tier 3 instruction, because you cannot do something as ambitious as New York City reads and solves without tackling those additional pieces. So I look forward to hearing from all of you. We are all here taking notes. Like good teachers, we will go back and we will reconcile our notes and make sure we all heard the same things and have our marching orders. But this is the kind of space that really matters to us, because it tells us how we're doing and how we can do better. So thank you.
Good evening. My name is Lene Quinn. I'm a math educator, longtime E4E New York member, and last year I spoke on a panel of educators joined by former Chancellor Banks to call on New York City Public Schools to make investments in high-quality math education, including materials and supports for educators. Almost a year later, the data is in. A majority of educators in New York City Solves districts are confident in implementing their district's high-quality instructional materials, and Solves teachers are reporting slightly higher student engagement. This trend highlights a positive shift. As for me, I've always taught upper-level math courses, 8th grade and higher. Early on, I noticed a divide. Some students love math and persevere through challenges, while others were disinterested and disengaged. But when I began teaching high school, especially 9th grade Algebra 1, the number of students who said they liked math had shrunk dramatically. I would hear things like, "I love you, Miss Quinn, but I really hate math." Too often, these same students were missing key foundational skills needed to succeed. It made me wonder, what's happening in earlier grades that leads to this struggle and anxiety around math? It wasn't until I began tutoring a 6th grader that I saw the gap up close. Students weren't mastering the skills they needed, skills that should have been locked in well before middle school. By the time they arrived in Algebra 1, they were already behind and discouraged. That's why high-quality math instruction has to start early, in elementary school. Building a solid foundation means more than memorizing procedures. It means emphasizing problem-solving, critical thinking, and conceptual understanding from the start. And it means making math enjoyable through innovative approaches like storytelling, simulations, collaborative projects, and hands-on learning. Expanding New York City Solves to earlier grades is a critical step to making that vision real. Strong foundations in elementary school will lead to better academic outcomes, greater confidence in math, and more students excited to pursue STEM fields. Tonight, I'd love to hear about how New York City Public Schools aims to ensure that high-quality math instruction expands to earlier grades such as elementary school, providing students the strong, engaging foundation they need long before they reach high school. For now, I will pass it on to Daniel to speak about the next finding from the report. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Daniel. I'm a 9th grade math teacher here in New York City. While a majority of Solves educators reported confidence implementation, I'm here to share with you one of the most difficult challenges that we are facing: using our materials, the curriculum, and our current professional supports to navigate teaching students with diverse learning needs, especially students below grade level, students with IEPs, and our MLLs. Let me start by saying that I believe in the New York City Solves. I've seen the value in the IM approach. It's how students should learn math, by problem solving, reasoning through concepts, and building deep understanding. But at the same time, the curriculum, no curriculum is perfect, and we still have work to do to ensure that we're meeting the needs of all learners and guaranteeing that no one feels overwhelmed or left behind. This is critical to ensuring that New York City Solves works, which, by the way, is the best way to ensure the shifts last. In my school, we built in 2 periods of math. One for using the IM supports curriculum to offer small group instruction and interventions. That extra time and structure have been critical, especially for students who are still working to build their procedural fluency, or who may not have yet have the foundational knowledge expected in higher level classes like calculus or statistics. But not every school has that set up, and not every teacher has the support or the time to meet the needs of all students who are struggling with grade level content. That's where New York City Public Schools needs to step in. We need more than just curriculum. We need clear guidance and targeted professional learning that helps teachers meet the diverse needs in our classrooms. And just as we did in my school last June, where we came together to reflect on the curriculum and identify areas where our students needed more support, I believe every educator could benefit from that kind of structure and reflection and collaboration and planning time. It's what makes better instruction possible and the curriculum engaging for all learners. I'll pass it to Erica to share a little more context around the issue from her classroom experience. But later tonight, I'd love to hear what kinds of supports, whether it's through professional learning, resources, or guidance to schools on modifying their schedules, like at my school, can New York City Public Schools provide to ensure that all students, regardless where they start, can deeply engage with the curriculum? Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Erica, and I teach a 7th grade self-contained and ICC math class. My students are students with both English language learners and students with disabilities. I'm fortunate to work in a school with deeply student-centered leadership, embedded curriculum coaching, and a culture that supports innovation. Those structures allow me to reach learners more effectively. But as a trend to an E4E New York's report highlights, even with strong support, the needs of diverse learners far outpace what any individual teacher can meet alone. I will share a story about one of my students. For the purpose of protecting the student's identity, we will call her YA. YA is a bright, observant, and determined 7th grader. She's both an L and a student with disabilities, and she entered my class performing at a kindergarten level in math. Every day she showed up eager to learn despite the enormous challenges. With the help of my administration and curriculum coaches, I provided her with English and Spanish glossaries, broke tasks into microsteps, embedded visuals and manipulatives, and built in structured sentence starters and frames to support her participation in math tasks. We celebrated every win, solving a word problem using academic vocabulary, raising her hand to explain her thinking. YA made real progress, but despite all of our best efforts, the gap between her and full grade level mastery remained wide. Her story shows what's possible and where the limits when broader systematic supports are not in place. Professional learning can transform how we meet the needs of diverse learners from a reactive process to a proactive design. New York City Solve is already moving in the right direction. It acknowledges the real structural barriers, elevates teacher voice, and focuses on systematic solutions. But to truly fulfill its promise, it must invest in sustained, high-quality PL that equips teachers to meet the full range of student needs more efficiently, and to help best protect instructional time. Every student should feel that their brilliance is recognized and cultivated by the systems meant to serve them. Keith will speak next about PL trends and needs, but later tonight, I hope to hear more about New York City Public Schools' plans to ensure that the teachers across all New York City Solve districts receive the deep, sustained professional learning needed to consistently reach diverse learners, so that students like YA are supported by a system designed for their success, not just by individual effort. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Keith Payo. I teach Algebra 2 at Cypress Hills Collegiate Prep in District 19. I've been teaching illustrative math for 2 years, and over that period, I participated in a range of professional learning sessions. E4E's reports data found that most New York City Solve teachers are satisfied with their math professional learning. While this trend really resonates in my experience, my professional learning has been extremely helpful in improving my pacing. That is not across the board or true for all New York City Solve educators. NYCPS must improve communication with teachers and all other New York Solve stakeholders regarding pacing flexibility and other supportive school logistics like strategic scheduling. Last year, I was completing all the activities for each lesson, which is about 3, as well as all the practice problems. But doing all this work in each lesson was taking 2 to 3 days a lesson. This year, I learned in PL that I had the option to choose one activity that best fit my students and met the cool down at the end of the class. This problem could be used as and then the extra problems were used just for extra problems. Next year, I hope that with this lesson plan shift, I will improve on pacing even more than this year. This is why good PL training is important. It helps teachers plan to use the curriculum in the ways that best fits them and can give constraints and other logistic challenges. While my PL has been able to help me mitigate pacing challenges, PL is not addressing some of those types of support needs educators have. For example, while I love the curriculum, and I really do, I have been finding it easier to implement effective. I feel it does not directly relate enough to the Regents exams. Incorporating Regents readiness into daily lessons remains a challenge for most teachers. I was encouraged to find that I am not alone here. When teachers were asked in the E4E's survey about the changes they wanted to see in New York City Solves PL, the second most selected change, picked by 21% of Solves teachers, was receiving better guidance on aligned materials to the Regents. I teach a morning Regents prep class 2 days a week starting in January to supplement my students' Regents learning needs. I believe that without this morning prep, which took strategic scheduling, the students would struggle to pass the Regents exam. Another way I supplement my students' learning is by using the program EDIA, which is an artificial intelligence, which is aligned with the IM curriculum. I have seen this help the students' understanding of the lessons as I assign homework every night with EDIA. Again, effectively using EDIA was made possible through our district's host of the PL with the EDIA representatives who came and showed us how to use it for best practice. My PL provider shared that a school in our system has been using IM for many years and is able to get through the whole curriculum with at least 3 weeks dedicated to Regents Prep. I wish I had an opportunity to visit or collab to learn from them. Just hearing this, though, gave me hope that by year 5 of using this curriculum, I can feel comfortable getting through my IM at that pace as well. I will be turning it over to Harpreet, but later I hope to hear, I'd like to address regards effort. Sorry, I apologize. Do we plan to see implementation of the curriculum through the next few years, including expansions to both middle school and elementary schools? How will you use PLs to support educators, and what key focuses will PL have to address issue educators are facing?
Thank you, Keith. Hello, my name is Harpreet Mundi, and I'm the Assistant Principal of Math Supervision in a large high school in Queens. My teachers are implementing the IM curriculum, with many having implemented the IM curriculum for over 5 years now. Naturally, my team and I were very excited with other high schools in New York City joined us 2 years ago for the IM experience. My goal includes making sure teachers have access to the specific supports they need, including meaningful professional learning opportunities both inside and outside of my school building. It is great to hear that many SOLVE educators are satisfied with professional learning available to them, and that there are clear opportunities for growth and refining professional learning experiences across districts. Educators today have already highlighted that the instructional shifts happening in classrooms towards engaging students and sense-making is happening, and that the support needed for professional learning for specific interventions for the Tier 2 and Tier 3 level. It's important that these interventions and professional learning opportunities, whether subject-specific, like those offered for teachers of math, or population-specific, like those offered for teachers of students with disabilities and MMLs, are messaged and constructed in a way that is cohesive with whole school systems, so that when any teacher goes back to their building, it does not lead to any conflict, confusion, or frustration. Supporting teachers means helping them make adjustments. For SOLVES to succeed, educators are seeking more clear guidance on how to flex pacing, provide interventions, and offer additional supports to students within existing conditions. While schools may follow SOLVES unit
pacing, the planning in between takes deep school level work. Educators are seeking clear or consistent messaging and sharing of experiences that could be helpful to all in making instructional adjustments, including pacing. We would like professional learning to be aligned across roles. Math certified teachers, teachers for special populations, principals, and programmers all need a shared understanding of curriculum expectations and the conditions needed to meet those outcome expectations. Educators are seeking more clear direction on how to effectively modify school schedules to enable the flexibility needed for things like double blocks or additional support classes that could help ensure sufficient on-grade math learning time. The variability in programming for students that need more support in math across New York City is worth noting, and actually nationwide it's worth noting. System-wide directives are needed to ensure schools are equipped and supported in scheduling supplemental time for students that could benefit from it. When supplemental time is clearly expected to be built into school programming and not left to individual interpretation with floating recommendations, it promotes more consistency across schools, enabling more students to benefit no matter which school they attend. I truly appreciate your commitment to advancing math instruction across the city, and I'm very excited with the direction SOLVS is headed in. This evening, I'd love to hear your vision for how we can ensure all stakeholders have clear and aligned expectations, messaging, and understandings regarding instructional shifts in math and the conditions needed to make them successful, particularly through communication around pacing flexibility, as well as stronger direction and not just recommendations for strategic programming for student schedules so that alignment is felt across all roles and actualized in schools. For now, I will pass it along to Kathy, who will introduce Trend 4. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kathy Zhu, and I teach 7th grade math at Salk School of Science. As previously mentioned, effective PL is essential to building teacher confidence. This is true for me personally too. I found that having support when implementing a new curriculum, especially a rich thinking curriculum like I am, has been critical to my confidence and success in the classroom. Trend 4 from the E4E New York report shows that when PL opportunities include best practices like instructional feedback, student data analysis, and collaboration, teachers find it more useful in implementing their curriculum. This is true in my personal experience. This school year is my second year using the IM curriculum. During my first year with the curriculum, and for over a decade before that, my school hired an NYU math education professor to lead PD for the department. My work with this professor profoundly impacted my practice, and I don't say that lightly. Most PD I've experienced is just average. What made that PL so impactful was the focused instructional feedback and collaboration. She helped me unpack the pedagogy behind IM's activities and make concepts clear for students. She brought cultural insight, and together we developed strategies that changed my approach to student misconceptions. She brought a wealth of cultural knowledge that helped me better understand student thinking. My favorite example of that is related to slope. We know we can calculate that with rise over run, but in some cultures, or first, a common preconception students have is they'll flip it and do run over rise. And I learned from her that in some cultures, fractions are read with the denominator first. And so working together to find ways to develop student thinking with a coach like her who had deep math pedagogical knowledge was really ideal. This year, my school used a coach provided through NYC SOLVS through New Visions. While she was kind and marginally helpful, I did not receive ongoing high-quality feedback to keep improving. She prioritized newer teachers and told me that my instruction was good, even though I clearly identified some personal learning and support goals to her at the beginning of the year. Similarly, I've heard stories from colleagues at the school I worked at previously that is also implementing IM who don't feel supported enough. They feel like there are only accountability checks with no support. Teachers need to feel supported and included in the building out of this implementation for it to go well. Caitlin will later speak about how essential including educators in the process is. For now, my department and staff has been finding ways to collaborate and learn from each other, using planning days on our own, and we use our previous coaching experience with the NYU math professor to guide our thinking and include focused instructional feedback and collaboration. The bottom line is the most effective PL is teacher-led, collaborative, guided by math education experts, and designed to build lasting expertise within schools. It's not enough to offer one-off sessions. We need sustained hands-on learning and real-time feedback that sharpens our practice over time. I'm eager to hear New York City Public Schools' vision for ensuring PL draws from educators' professional expertise. Lauren will speak more about educators' PL experiences next. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Lauren DeVita, and I'm a middle school math teacher. I'm currently teaching Algebra 1 to 8th graders at College Point Collaborative. The survey findings around Trend 4 really resonated with me. Teachers who participate in research-backed professional learning find more value in it. I've seen firsthand how the right kind of support can help build teacher confidence and ultimately lead to stronger instruction for students. After using the Amplify curriculum for a year, my colleagues and I weren't sure we were implementing it the way it was intended. Early feedback and research-backed practices helped us feel more confident, which made district visits much less stressful and allowed us to focus more on student learning. One of the most valuable forms of professional learning for me has been intervisitations, getting to see other teachers in action. That's how I first learned about key tools like companion mode and simple but powerful instructional practices like pair sharing. I was excited to try them immediately because I had seen them work with students right in front of me. When professional learning is rooted in research, we know it's high quality. It feels reliable. It removes a lot of the anxiety around doing it wrong, especially when the instructional approach is new to many of us. But for professional learning to have a lasting impact, it has to be more than a one-off session squeezed into 45 to 60-minute after-school slots. Too often, our school-wide agendas are packed with topics that aren't relevant to the work we're doing in the classroom. We need more opportunities for teacher-led collaborative PL that connects directly to our curriculum shifts. One solution could be selecting teacher leaders from each school to attend district PLs and then giving them dedicated time, not just an expectation, to bring that learning back to their teams. Right now, even when teachers attend external trainings, there's often no space built into the school schedule to share that learning across departments. I happen to be really lucky to work in a district that started that work, and they have been implementing a series of PLs focused on unpacking the new curriculum, and I did see that there is going to be time dedicated to turnkey that, and the math department is honestly really excited about it, so we hope to see more opportunities like that come about. Research-backed collaborative professional learning could transform our classrooms. It would help build real uniformity across grade levels, strengthen how we use new resources, and create a culture of sharing best practices, rather than everyone discovering key features months too late. Caitlin will share the final trend with you, but later I'd also like to hear about NYCPS's plan to improve NYC Solve's professional learning support by investing in collaborative, evidence-based, teacher-led models. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Caitlin Wissert. Like Lauren and Erica, I also teach math at MS 379 College Point Collaborative in Queens. Over the past 6 years, I've also served as a peer collaborative teacher. The final survey findings about how teachers' perception of professional learning connect directly to their confidence with curriculum implementation. You've heard this again and again tonight, but it also really resonates with me because I've seen it firsthand. Effective professional learning enhances my confidence in curriculum implementation by equipping me with the tools, strategies, and support I need to succeed. When the learning is hands-on, focused on real-world applications, and aligns with the curriculum, I feel more prepared to face classroom challenges and meet the learning targets. But when professional learning feels disconnected or overly theoretical, it's hard to apply what I've learned in a meaningful way, and that can shake your confidence as a teacher. For example, when I've had strong training on meeting the needs of diverse learners or formative assessments, I leave feeling not just more informed, but more empowered to meet the needs of my students. That kind of preparation makes all the difference in how successful we are with the new curriculum. You've heard about some of the pitfalls of the current professional learning offerings today from supporting educators, with meeting the needs of diverse learners, with pacing, with Regents alignment. Taking action on this feedback in the upcoming months is important. Successful implementation depends on how well educators are prepared, supported, and equipped to make changes, and their feedback can help refine the approach to ensure it's impactful and sustainable. Teachers are the ones working with the students every day. We know where things are working and where things are not. Centering the voices of educators and soliciting their feedback would make professional learning more relevant and impactful. But for the sustainability of this initiative and for teachers to feel truly supported, making sure educator voices are truly centered is essential. When teachers are part of shaping the professional developments we receive, not only is it more relevant, it also creates a sense of ownership and buy-in. For the initiative to succeed, high-quality professional learning guided by the real day-to-day experiences of educators is a must. It is so key that we have ongoing collaboration between educators, policymakers, and administrators to ensure that professional learning and curriculum implementation are aligned, effective, and sustainable. Thank you for listening to us tonight. We are looking forward to hearing from you now. To get the Q&A started, I'd love to hear how New York City Public School is planning to ensure that educator feedback shapes both the design and delivery of professional learning, so that teachers feel confident, prepared, and fully supported in bringing New York City Solves to life in the classroom. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm looking at the agenda, and it looks like I'll have an opportunity to close out to address all of the questions that you raised. But to respond specifically, we do have the team here to jump in on the Q&A, and then I'll save my remarks for the end. Good evening, everyone. First of all, I want to say Happy Teacher Appreciation Day. We really appreciate all of you, but most importantly, we value your opinion, your feedback, and all everything that we've been hearing around NYC Solves. We have really been working closely, not just with EPRI, doing some focus groups to really hear what's working for teachers and what's not working, but we also collect a lot of survey data after professional learnings, whether it be within your district or after some remote PL that's been given through illustrative mathematics. One of the things that we've heard the most is that teachers don't like the remote PL. We heard that the first year. We changed it a little bit for the second year. We've heard it again all year long. And I think we're happy to say that this year we're making a very, very strong commitment to say that the majority of professional learning that will be offered through New York City Solves will be in person, where you will be collaborating with teachers in your district, supported by your district instructional leads, as well as the vendor. We're also really working with our vendors to make sure that they understand the audience. We've heard, right? The people who are delivering the PO, they don't understand New York City Public School, what it is to be a New York City Public School teacher, and we're really working with them this year to customize professional learning to make sure that it meets the needs of all of our teachers. We are happy to continue to receive your feedback as we make changes to our next year's plan. Things are not finalized yet, so before we leave today, if you have any other suggestions in terms of professional learning or job embedded supports, please let us know so that we can take those into consideration. The professional learning is only as good if you guys are receiving it, right? We have all the best intentions, but if you're not receiving the professional learning because of remote or because you don't feel as if you deliver or facilitator relates to you, right, then we're not doing our job. So let us know, we're here to support.
Thank you. I'll pass it back to Lene so that she can remind you of your question for tonight. So earlier I spoke about middle and high school student engagement and how difficult it is to help a student love math after years of frustration and disappointment with it. How is New York City Public Schools aiming to ensure that high-quality math instruction expands to earlier grade levels, such as elementary school, providing students the strong, engaging foundation they need long before they reach high school?
So we agree with you. And what we have started is now New York City Solves has reached out into middle schools. We've started with a phased, supported, and monitored approach for middle schools, just like we did for high schools. And now thinking about what are our next steps for engaging with elementary school teachers, and really thinking about what would implementation of high quality curriculum that aligns with New York City Falls and middle school and high school look like for our younger students.
Thank you so much for sharing. Now we'll pass it to Daniel for the next question.
Hi, thank you, Renee. My question was, what kinds of supports, whether through professional learning, resources, or guidance to schools on modifying schedules like we did at my school, can New York City Public Schools provide to ensure that all students, especially those behind grade level, can deeply engage with this curriculum?
We agree with you on that too. Surprise. But Nicole mentioned, right, we gather input from a variety of places, and that is something that we have heard loud and clear. It's something that we've seen when we visit schools. It's something that we know intimately from our own practice, either as teachers or principals or any kind of school leader, that this kind of work is hard and it takes time, right? And we are now thinking about your school, other schools like yours. What are some of the models that we can help to provide to schools? I also heard, how are we being a little bit more proactive about what this looks like so that we're all on the same page and really thinking about what is the best model that has enough flexibility so that within a school, it can then be implemented with coherence.
I promise I'll shut up after this, so you can get through all your questions, but I have to jump in on the programming piece because it's something that I've been talking about for kind of exam without, so long as you know me. One thing, so yes to everything that Delia said, but we also want to make sure that our chiefs of school support are working really closely with superintendents as they have meetings, budget and HR meetings with their principals, to look at the budget and to really get a sense of what is possible in the school. Why do I say this? My school only had 380 kids. I had 2 periods of math. I made that investment, but because of that investment, I had to sacrifice something else, right? And it was usually a higher level class. And so how are we making decisions, especially on a shared campus model, to make sure that we're not taking away from another opportunity for our young people, right? Because small schools have limited resources. So what I want to say is that we also agree that more is better when it's quality, right? That's the other piece. So if a school, let's say school has the resources to be able to bring in a second math class that's standards aligned and not remedial, and that kids can get credit for, just throwing it out. If that's the case, we also want to make sure that the instruction happening in that second class is really supporting students towards accelerated learning. Because we don't want kids living in this remediation world and then never getting access, right, to accelerated learning. And so more of something ineffective is not good either. And so it's not only giving input around the programming piece, but it's also making sure that the type of course that will be offered is actually worthy of the young people who are sitting in it. And where not possible to have a second course, and what resources are available to create an after-school model or a before-school model, or is there a shared instruction model? Is there a virtual option, right? So those are the things that we're discussing here, but I agree with what Celia said, and that we want to put forth different models that suit different school contexts. So if I'm a school leader and I say, I have a school with 340 kids, you can't expect me to implement something that Truman High School with 2,000 kids can do because they have lots of teachers. We're saying, hey, here's option A, B, and C, depending on the size of your school, your budget, some shared instruction opportunities that would give that flexibility. And then the second part of that is making sure that we're also giving guidance on what that course should look like, so young people aren't sitting there in a class that's really not worthy of their time, and that, quite frankly, shouldn't be credit bearing because it's not aligned with high school standards.
And in my travels across the city, far before I was chancellor, I've seen way too many students sitting in those classes. That's when attendance goes down. That's when engagement goes down. That's when young people say, I've been labeled as stupid or low functioning because you put me in this class. So I just want to make sure that we're also taking a look at great practices and great models as well as the stuff of those classes to make sure that they're worthy of implementation.
Thank you. I appreciate hearing your thoughts. Now I'll pass it to Erica for the next question. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Earlier, I shared the story about my student, YA. Following Daniel's question about professional learning and resources to reach diverse learners, what other support specifically can we offer to help educators meet the needs of students with disabilities and English language learners?
So we're currently working with Understood.org and PLSLF to really think about how do we target some of our professional learning opportunities for our multilingual learners and our students with disabilities. We're also putting together some protocols that teachers and our job and support vendors can use with our multilingual learners, students with disabilities, and students who may be below grade level in mind, to think about how we can engage in teacher teaming, lesson planning, minute planning, but really thinking about the students that we have in front of us. And I think this speaks to what teachers are looking for in terms of owning some of that PL, but also sharing best practices as we implement our ourselves.
Thank you. I'm going to pass it to Keith for the next question.
Thank you, Erica. Educators in the equation revealed that the majority of educators feel neutral to positive regarding professional learning. So my question is, how do we plan to see the implementation of this curriculum through for the next few years? And how will you use PLs to support educators? And what key focuses will PLs have to address the issue educators are facing?
I think one of the words that we heard echoed often just here on the table is collaboration. That teachers really yearn for more time to talk with other people who are doing the same work. And so really thinking like one of the powers of a shared curriculum is that now that collaboration is around a shared practice. And we can really think about how to use that curriculum and think about intervisitations. I also heard this idea of like when I now go and visit school and see it in practice, it's actually something that I can transfer right back to my own classroom because it's already embedded in the curriculum that we're using. And so thinking about what are the places, the bright spots that we see, where do we see practices that we want to see replicated, and how do we make those opportunities available to teachers to see those practices, go and improve out alone, right? So that you have somebody else to talk about and think about, well, what does this look like when we come back and do it in our own classrooms? So that's just the start. It's one way.
Thank you. I appreciate the insight. I will now pass it to Harpreet for the next question.
Thank you, Keith. As I shared successful, teacher voices are there. As I shared, successful implementation will require clear and aligned messaging across all roles at the school and district level. How will New York City Public Schools ensure all stakeholders have clear and aligned expectations, messaging, and understandings regarding the instructional shifts in math and conditions needed to make them successful, particularly through communication around pacing and instructional adjustment flexibility? And for the second part, you kind of already answered that question quite a bit when it comes to programming. And maybe if you could just give us like a feel for what it would look like to support schools in looking carefully at their strategic programming and student scheduling.
So I want to talk briefly about the first piece. So before we focus in on the actual structures for communication, there needs to be widespread norming on best practices. And so one of the things I visit schools a lot, I should, it's not out of your job description, but these deep instructional visits within one district, I would see
very different practices across two schools that are maybe a block or two apart in the same district. And where we see standardization of practice and cohesiveness within one district, if you go to a neighboring district, you see something very different as well. Now, granted, with solves and reads, now we're all, we're using the same curriculum, that's great. But the instructional shifts are still the way we piece, the way we modify, those things are still not standardized across districts. And that's the next phase of reads and solves. There's too much intervention work happening in isolation. And part of that is because there are different visions across the city for what these best practices look like. And so when I met with a group of teachers earlier, they told me we need more flexibility and you can't take away teacher autonomy. And they said respectfully, you are some of the best teachers in New York City with proven results. What about my first year teachers who are starting in September and they don't know what flexibility and modification look like in a responsible way? We need to present the models. And so quite frankly, at Central, what we need to do is start making sure that we're warming with our superintendents and saying, these are best practices, these are the instructional shifts we want to see. These are good examples of modifications and piecing and lesson planning, etc. So that way we're not taking away that autonomy, but we're giving guidelines on how to do that work, and we're giving examples of what that looks like for teachers by teachers. Once that happens, that communication doesn't only come from Central, it has to be doubled down on by superintendents, but also our union partners. So important that we're speaking the same language as both the UFT and CSA, and so the power of doing things for teachers by teachers is that it's signed and sealed by all of you, and now the UFT co-signs it, and they are helping us spread the message. CSA is helping us send the message, they know it's their responsibility to give curricula to their teachers, right? And so before we can continue to say the thing, we have to define the thing. And that's really what we're working on right now, because what we don't want to do is give you solid messaging, but then make it a poetry class when I was up for interpretation, because we're not doing that. So that's one thing. And then very briefly, on the programming piece, what it could look like is in a budget meeting. Let's say a superintendent, a principal is at their budget and HR meeting. If you are a principal, this could be a wonderful experience or a dreadful experience, depending on what your budget looks like. And there are often HR and budget folks who are not pedagogues. And they very much understand how to set up the mechanics of a budget and what streams of funds can be spent on which things. But they are not responsible for helping a principal define an instructional vision. ACPAs, your academic policy folks, they very much understand how to program a building through STARS and whatever other programs they're using to physically program their building. But again, they are not charged with building instructional vision. So with the superintendent's teams, my vision for this is that there is an instructional member of the superintendent team sitting in on these meetings to really get an understanding of the principal's vision and the central priorities as well. And then making sure that everyone in that room, from the budget and HR people to the APAs, are exploring what these courses would look like. So, okay, Principal Ramos, you want a second math class. What are the students going to be learning in this math class? Is it for every ninth grade student? Is it perhaps just for students who are performing at a certain level? What metrics are you using to determine the students entering that program? Okay, so if you do this, can you still offer a higher level math? Here are a couple of options across the city where we've seen success, and they have similar profiles to your school. Kind of the same, same enrollment, same size, similar population. These are some examples of success. Because if we just say, I want to study arts, and we don't think about the resources it's taking to do that, and we don't support the principal in setting up their instructional program with their budget and their hiring very, very early on, it's not going to necessarily be a model of success. So it's mapping out the models and then having a strategic partnership with an instructional person at the helm of that meeting
to really coach the principal around how to take all of those operational pieces to drive their instructional vision.
I hope that's helpful.
Thanks, Harpreet. As I said earlier, in order for NYC Solves to be successful, NYCPS must foster genuine teacher buy-in. My question is, how will NYCPS work to foster that buy-in and collaboration with teachers? And what is the rationale behind working with external providers rather than current or former NYCPS teachers or university-level experts or professionals or professors?
Hi everyone, my name is Rosemary, and you're many years as well. I just want to just add my appreciation to Teacher Appreciation Day, but also I think especially for E3, you all I think always come to this with a real spirit of collaboration for us, and just the teachers around this table. I think it's really clear that you really came to these math instructional shifts as you've been doing this implementation with a really open mind, and I just want to thank you for doing that work. I know this is a really different way to teach for many of you. I just want to thank you for really digging in to what this looks like for our kids. So on that question, I think the answer for us when it comes to support is always yes and, right? So I think what we think we need is a real, we need support that is coming from a real variety of places. Support that's coming from these professional learning vendors that are able to work at scale in a city as big as big and complicated as New York. We need support from our unions, our union staff, union partners. We need support from our district staff, their district partners. I think our thinking is that we can sort of build this web of support that we can kind of hit as many students. If we can really support as many students as many teachers as possible in the way that they might need. I think for what we heard a lot today around that teacher collaborative piece, I think you've heard this, and you've heard this in New York City Reads as well, and we're looking into models that we can pilot in the next year that really take that to heart. I think it was I'm sorry, Caitlin, yes. I think Caitlin, you mentioned this idea of having teachers from every school come together and be leaders in a district. That is something we are thinking about as a system for both Reads and Solves, because we know that the expertise is in our schools, and we want to be able to use that and to have people be leaders in our schools. And this is something we'd actually love to talk to you all at E4E as we build out this model over the course of the next year, to sort of think about what it would look like across our system.
Thank you. I will now pass it to Lauren for the final question.
Building off Kathy's question, it's critical for PL to be teacher-led, but also collaborative and evidence-based. I've seen firsthand how evidence-based PL can build teacher confidence. What are NYCPS's current plans to ensure that PL is collaborative, evidence-based, and teacher-led, including through interpretation opportunities? So we have, in terms of professional learning, we think that there are two pieces, right? There's this piece of building content knowledge, thinking about the way we teach math today is not the way we learned it. So sometimes you have to what is this math asking you to do? So when I go teach it to my students, I know what I'm asking my students to do, right? So part of it is building your content knowledge, and that's really what comes from the vendor. But the other piece is really around pedagogy and best practice, and those are the sessions where you engage with your district instructional needs, those communities of practice, which we've heard widespread are probably the best part about professional learning. Engaging with teachers across your district and really thinking about how is this working in my classroom? What adjustments can we make? Maybe you taught this lesson 2 weeks ago, maybe I'm a little bit behind. Give me some help. Tell me how I can get through this. Or maybe you taught this last year, this is my first year, right? Really building from within. And we want teachers to be able to engage in these district level PLs so that when they go back to their schools, you guys are pretty helping. What are the structures within the school for teachers to engage, right? So that when you're in your teacher teams, that you have the structures to say Let's unit plan, let's unpack together. Let's work with that school that's upstairs to do end presentation. So part of some of the work that we're going to be doing in those district level communities of practice really rely heavily on our teacher expertise, your best practices, and what's happening across the district for implementations. Thank you for sharing. I truly appreciate hearing all that you have shared this evening. I would now like to pass the floor to Evan Stone, CEO of Educators for Excellence.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I'll just pick up where Maria started, which was gratitude first to the educators. Happy Teacher Appreciation Day. Thank you for being here tonight. Hopefully this is a way to feel honored and celebrated in this work. And thank you, Chancellor. I came here from a national press conference that we did. So we released a big national poll today called Voices from the Classroom. And one of the things that was in that poll was that 85% of teachers across the country are reporting that they've shifted curriculum in the last 3 years. So you are at the forefront of what you know is a national movement around high quality instructional materials. You also said, tell us what we're doing well. Well, when we look at that data, only 36% of teachers across the country are feeling satisfied with their professional learning. And so I do think you should feel good about where New York City is, where these numbers are 1 or 2 or 3 years into a shift. We shouldn't feel satisfied, but we should feel like we're on the right track. So first, I just want to congratulate you and celebrate the work that in a system this large, with this much complexity, we are making real progress. I also want to express gratitude because the other thing we were talking about at the national level, Congressman Hayes introduced a resolution to encourage policymakers to deeply listen to and engage with teachers. And you're doing that tonight at a level of depth that's like almost a little scary. How you're going. So thank you for that and for like going really deep with us. And when I listen to this conversation, part of my job is to think about how do we sum this up into what we're hearing. And we are hearing keep NYC solves, that we need to improve it, and we need to particularly improve it around expanding our professional learning, thinking about our students with disabilities, our MLL students. We need to think about how we support and improve our pacing and scheduling, all the things that we talked about. We also need to sustain. How do we embed this into our system, baseline the funding for it, embed the coaching practices so we aren't relying forever on outside PL. We're building a real instructional coaching capacity in schools, and then expand it. That if we really want this to have an impact on driving opportunity for kids that might be started with, we can do that by making sure that we're starting early enough so that kids aren't showing up multiple years in time but are ready to move the work forward. So it was so encouraging to hear that we agreed a number of times tonight and the alignment with that. The other thing I think I heard a lot about is how important the role of the district superintendent and their teams are in getting this right. And so I think my ask of you is, I think one of the gaps we're seeing is how do we help those superintendents do this work that you and your team are doing now? Deeply engage teachers in their districts to regularly hear and build that buy-in that we talked about. So I think the role that E3 would love to play is how we think about expanding the educator engagement that is going on around high quality instructional material, that read or solves, and partnering supporting superintendents to really be more thoughtful and just it's a skill set that I think they're building. Really help them build that skill set of doing deep educator engagement, given the diversity of needs that have been expressed here and exist across your city. So thank you and look forward to partnering.
Well, the good news is you didn't tell us anything new. But all kidding aside, I really want to thank you for the very targeted, helpful feedback. It was very specific. Many of you came with proposed next steps and ideas, and that is deeply appreciated, so much more than you know, because lots of people in New York City have opinions, but not everybody has proposed solutions. And so again, Evan, just thank you so much for facilitating this and for always being such good partners. So I want to speak very quickly because I know we're over time. Interventions Tier N and Tier 2 and Tier 3 work. Again, I've spoken about this lightly before. This is very, very important as it relates to reads and solves. So that next phase is something that we are very, very much working on. It's central, but to your point, everyone and Evan put a fine point in your remarks.
The superintendents are key and their teams. And so the way in which we build capacity, again, learning what are best practices, what do great practices look like. If Danielle walks into a school and she tells me this was an excellent classroom, I know second guess Danielle. I know her instructional lens. I know how she moved her district and her school, and so I trust that. But we need to make sure that all superintendents are speaking the same language, that they are all on the same page in terms of best practices and instructional shifts, and that they're speaking the same language in their conversations with their principals, and so their principals have those conversations with their teachers. So it's very much something that we want to be working on, and that we are working on. Again, remediation versus acceleration, kids cannot, I recently said to someone, doesn't it feel good when you start working out and think, oh, you can lift 10-pound weights and it's a struggle, and then all of a sudden the 10-pound weights become easy, and you're like, yeah, let's stay with the 10-pound weight, but you're going to continue to have like these little noodle arms if you don't pick up heavy weights, right? You have to push yourself to grow, and that's no different in a classroom. You can't just stay with the 10-pound weights. It might make you feel good, feel like a rock star, because you're able to get there, but how do we accelerate learning? How do we push our students with the appropriate scaffolding and support? And remediation for far too long. They are isolated from high quality instruction and we're not moving along. So what does good tier 2 instruction look like? What does good tier 3 instruction look like? And most importantly, we have a lot of programs floating around New York City. How do we know that the best ones are being offered to our children? Teachers should not have to make those decisions on their own. You shouldn't have 5 or 6 different programs in one classroom. What are the highest leverage technology tools, programs that we are putting in front of our children, teachers don't have to think about, and that they can deliver as part of their tier 1 instruction, right? So again, all things that we're working on here at Central. We talked a great deal about the programming piece. I'll leave that one alone because I know I love talking about that. Professional learning. I do want to mention one thing about the professional learning piece. The other issue that principals and teachers face in a school building is the competing interest among different initiatives, right? So if you have restorative justice going on, you need to send 5 or 6 different people to be trained for a week. Then you have your emergency readiness training. Then you have whatever, godforsaken compliance thing that we send out to all of you that we make you do. And there are only a handful of professional learning opportunities in a calendar, right? And so I think the other thing that is clear to me is that we have to work together and break down the silos at Central and really figure out what PDs, which PDs need to be delivered, how can we support from a district and central level so that way we can create structures for professional learning communities, both intra and inter-districts. But also keep in mind that some of these other professional learning opportunities will exist in schools, and helping principals kind of streamline some of those. So that way you can actually visit classrooms and talk about the things that you like to talk about, which is instruction and assessment data, and not emergency readiness training. You have to do emergency readiness training, but we want to make sure that some of these compliance pieces are offered in a smart way that doesn't take away from the professional learning calendar, and those greater structures for collaboration. Someone mentioned, and I apologize for not knowing who specifically, the culturally responsive. Yes, you gave the culturally responsive example. I just want to really hone in on that really quickly. First of all, culturally responsive sustaining education is under attack. I don't know if you've noticed, all the interesting things that come out of Washington these days. But what we need to really look at is how we are being culturally responsive in our lesson planning, in our assessment, and our explanations of concepts. For far too long, we've talked about CRSC in a very specific way as it relates to race and ethnicity, but we haven't done a great job in bridging that into the instructional worlds, at least not outside of humanities. We've talked about a plethora of books that speak to different languages and backgrounds and ethnicities and races, but what does that look like in a math class, in a science class? And we need to be more intentional about it. And as diversity is under attack in this country, this is an excellent opportunity for us to revive CRSE and marry it to the great instructional work that we're doing, which also speaks to linguistic diversity and support for our indigenous learners. And then finally, one thing that wasn't needed today, we didn't bring it up specifically, but it is tied to the programming, is grading policies and practices. Young people need to feel like they can fail forward and that there is not a test score attached to it. And so what do good checks for understanding, formative assessment practices look like where students can get things wrong and get a little messy and play in dessert and not have to worry about it impacting a GPA? That is so critical. How do we also have a mindset shift with our school leaders and our teachers to understand that not every single thing needs to be graded, and that it is okay to give an opportunity to redo something for the sake of learning the concept, not just for raising the grade. Grading policies and practices for far too long have been living just at the I won't even say school level, this is the department level. I mean, it's ridiculous how decentralized policies and practices are outside of an academic policy guide. And so I just want you to know that in my very ramblings about school leadership and instruction, because they have to pull the mic away from me, I very much enjoy connecting all of the dots. And one of those dots that is sorely in need of being connected to everything else is grading policies and practices, and you all reminded me of that tonight. So I want to thank you. You have our commitment to really increase collaboration and all the other things that we listed. We know this is the first of many conversations, and we look forward to moving along with all of your support.
Thank you.